I should probably hit. Oh, we are live. Hello, Daphne.
Hi, Cliff.
I got caught off guard there. I just can't catch a break. I feel like such a victim in life.
Yeah.
Would you be my hero?
Yeah, I will. I'm going to tell you how everything's just going to be great. Don't feel bad. Everything's awesome. Or I can agree with you and I can say, you know what? You're right. It's horrible. It stinks. There's nothing you can do. You should just give up.
Or you could play the role of the, what is it? It is the save. What are the three things?
Yeah. Victim, villain, and hero.
Villain. I couldn't remember the villain.
Yeah.
I don't play that enough.
Yeah. Yeah. I do it pretty well.
Do you really?
Villain and hero. Yeah. Villain and hero are my go-tos for sure. More than victim in my own consciousness. Like I'm rarely do I get like, there's nothing I can do. I'm more like that guy. If they only knew what they could, if they only knew how to do it the right way, I can do a lot that pretty good.
All right.
And then hero's like, it's going to be fine.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about all this stuff. Do you want to give us just a quick little teaser as to what's coming? And then I will click the button to play our amazing intro.
Well, let me just say this. If you spent time with Negative Nelly, we're going to tell you how to manage it.
Welcome to Life, the ultimate choose-your-own adventure game with hosts Cliff Ravenscraft and Daphne Scott. Join this dynamic duo as they explore the profound concept of life as a thrilling adventure, blending ancient wisdom and modern psychology. Embrace the joy of living with presence, creativity, and playfulness. It's time to navigate the game of life together. Are you ready to play? Let the adventure begin.
All right, Daphne, what stood out to you this week?
Embrace the joy of living with presence.
Oh my gosh, no way. I'm not kidding you. I just wrote down embrace the joy of living.
Of living.
just of living. I forget presence.
Forget presence.
Just live.
Presence. Just live, man.
Live. Oh my goodness. All right, so what are we talking about, Daphne?
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about negative emotion. We're going to talk about how enticing it is also to fall into the trap of negative emotion and what to do when we find ourselves around it, hanging around with people maybe, or even when we're in this. So I want to say a little bit about where this episode came from. So I was watching, I can't remember, I was watching a show or maybe it was the news, but I just noticed how much what I would say is like a lack of joy. It was just kind of went on with this narrative and this story. I must have been watching something on the news and it just went on. It was horrible. Everything was bad. This person was never going to really be able to help themselves. What were they going to do? And I just thought, man, I don't know how much longer I can listen to this and how much. And by the way, the news is sort of there. We're going to talk about victim, villain, hero, because it is really how a good story is created. You have to have somebody that does the wrong thing. Someone that's the victim, at the effect of the person or the thing doing the wrong thing, doing something bad. And then the resolution, what's going to save the person, right? Sometimes they save themselves, but typically there's a hero that comes in that will do the saving. So this whole narrative is around that. And I have a certain predilection to just listening to people complain. I don't like it.
Yeah,
I don't enjoy it.
I find myself easily affected by a lot of complaining.
Me too.
Especially if it comes from somebody that I very much respect, that I love, and it happens to be as a result of something that is a significant shift in their quality of life.
Yeah. Yes. So being around that, and I think most people are probably affected by a lot of complaining. To be honest, there is a real thing. Emotional contagion is real. And I think the negative, sort of like the negative emotions stick to us like Velcro. I think probably because of our brain wiring, sort of like, oh my gosh, I don't want that to happen to me. Or, oh my gosh, I don't want to be in that position, sort of that protective mechanism that we have. So negative emotion is it's catchy.
I hear what you're saying. And I've not been exposed to that thought before, but my question it's slightly off topic, but it's on the topic of this because the emotions being a contagion. And I do see that negative emotion sometimes can stick like Velcro, but is that any more true of negative emotions than it could be the opposite of something like somebody who's, you enter an environment and the people in this environment are so filled with joy and appreciation and all this other stuff. My experience is that can stick like Velcro just as eagerly as the opposite, given the same dosage or intensity of the emotion.
100%.
Okay.
Absolutely. There's your solution, Cliff. Well, you kind of just got to the end.
I do that all the time.
Hang out with positive people.
I don't think, here's what I love about your topic today. It is, you said, you titled this episode, Negative Emotions, Supporting Others Without Making It Worse. And so the idea here is the solution is not just extricate yourself from people who have a negative way of communicating and or being, but it's not just finding and surrounding yourself only with positive people who have good things going on.
Yeah.
But it is about how can we live life with the people we truly love and not be affected by their current situation, circumstances, and or maybe even a habitual way of living emotionally.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think in the spirit of, I was thinking, well, you and I are both coaches, and I was thinking, one of the skills that, and I don't know if it was this, for you, if it was so, kind of, it was, well, I'll say it for me, it was a kind of in my face when I was learning to really be with people. And I'm sure as a physical therapist, I had to learn this too. Although, by the way, they never really talked to us about this skill, about how to be with people when they were in pain, how to be with people when they were, falling on a hard time in their life. I don't remember, and I'm sure maybe we had a course on it when I was going through my education, but I don't remember anyone really saying to me, hey, when people are complaining or they're having a tough time, this is how not only you show empathy to them, but this is also how you practice in a way that you don't take all that on.
Yeah.
That you're not getting caught up in their narrative. Maybe they are in a victim consciousness. They're seeing themselves as incapable, and you don't start buying into that, which isn't helpful for people, by the way. So I had to sort of sort that out in many ways myself. And had to learn how to. So I don't know if that is like a thing that ever showed up for you, or if it was really obvious to you, but just. And that's why I think the victim, villain, hero, which we're going to talk about, is so important, because there's nothing less empowering to people than to see them as unempowered.
Yeah. It has definitely showed up for me in the earlier stages. And I recognized that I was surrounded by a lot of people who were struggling, because I initially, when I began my business strategy and mindset coaching, it was for early stage aspiring entrepreneurs, which, by the way, I still work with a lot of those people. I have a special group coaching program just for those individuals.
Yep.
But I was actually pretty much focused to those people, to the exclusion of people who were thriving in business. As far as my coaching, I had a peer network of thriving entrepreneurs, but that was maybe somewhere between maybe 1 to 3 hours a week spent with people who are thriving in business, and 20 to 25 hours a week with people who are hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. It's like they're like, I'm living on food stamps. I can't buy medicine. I don't know if I'm going to put food on the table. These people are really struggling, and one thing after another. And it's like, my daughter I just found out my daughter's got depression and she's cutting herself. And I mean, just,
oh my gosh.
like I don't like to share all the things, although I'm not saying any names, but just so many heavy real life. Wow. Yes. And I would sometimes have 2 or 3 coaching calls in a day, and I'd start my day on this really high note. And then I just like, wow, at the end of the day, I feel like, whew, that was heavy. That was heavy.
Yeah.
And so emotionally depleted. And I will say that early on, I found myself starting to process and filter my own experiences with a little bit of the victim language that I was hearing, but as soon as I caught it in myself, I'm like, wait a second, I'm not the victim here. I'm a creator. I'm not a victim. I'm not an abuser. And I don't even need to be the hero. I just need to be present to what's going on, evaluate it, make some intentional choices. And so for me, it probably took several months to kind of balance out. How do I do that? Initially, I went to the opposite end. I'm like, listen, I just don't want to work with negative people. I only want to work with people who are thriving. And I found that that's not the solution. And the reason why I say, and I know it sounds kind of funny, but I genuinely did this. I only booked sessions with people who were in a really good place. And what I found after, let's just say 3 to 4 months of that, is that all of a sudden I'd find somebody who's aspiring entrepreneur and stuff like that, and they're telling me their story, and I'm like, you just don't see it. It's like, how can you not see this? And I'm not being empathetic, and I'm not able to, and I'm like, So I think there is, for me, I love the topic of this. It's like, how can I actually be involved in relationships with people who have a very negative perception and attitude and use very negative language, and still be in relationship with them in such a way that they don't feel more alone, more isolated, and so that they could actually break from the cycle of the victim, abuser, and hero themselves.
Well, and you just said the phrase, I think is so important. Supporting, you're supporting them to break the cycle. And, there can be the state that people can get in, self-included, although not very long for me, where you have that negative, like you have a negative moment in your life, or you have a negative, an experience that has happened, that, which we all have experiences that happen where, you're in that moment. There can be people who have more of a pessimistic view of things in the moment as well. But you said it, it's like to support that sort of what I would call a pattern interrupt. And how do we do that? Not to try to convince people that things are different. And I want to say this is, where you were headed so great, because when we listen to someone complain, or they're stuck and they have a problem, and we listen to them, it can be very tempting to want to give them a bunch of solutions.
You said that you sometimes will lead towards the abuser. If I'm not careful, I will jump straight into the hero role.
Yes, and I do that too. And in leadership, by the way, this is the other place that I learned this. In leading teams and leading people, it was a real go-to move. One member of my team would come to me with a complaint, a concern. Immediately, I go into problem solving.
Yep.
Immediately. And I don't know if you've ever encountered this, but you start giving out solutions, and what you will hear back is, well, I tried that. Well, I don't think that'll work because, well, I don't. And the issue isn't that the solutions don't work. It's that the consciousness that you're talking to is not available to hear the solutions. It's simply not available.
I love that. So yes, that's one downside of just jumping straight into the role of the hero is exactly what you're saying. Another issue is if you could actually take and invest the amount of time necessary, use some tools and strategies to interrupt the pattern, to help during that conversation raise their level of consciousness in such a way that they would be able to actually receive your feedback, receive your advice. But even that's dangerous.
It is.
Because now all of a sudden you're like, listen, in some way I'm in agreement with you that you are incapable of doing this yourself. Therefore, let me give you the solution. And now that person every time is going to come back and look for the hero. Save me again, save me again, save me again. When in fact, they're their own hero. And they're not yet aware of it. And if we really have an opportunity as a coach to help somebody find that solution from within, that was the biggest challenge for me. And coaching a lot of coaches, they're like, Cliff, you don't understand. people don't want me to ask them questions so that they can find the solutions themselves. What happens if they find out that they have the answers within them? They won't need me anymore.
Oh, geez, Louise.
Yes, that's the point of coaching.
You're like, yeah.
Yes.
Well, this is the old, what is it? Teach a person to fish or something. Yeah. Teach them. You can give them a fish or teach them to fish idea. So yeah. And there's another part to this that I think is so important when we're with someone and they come to us with a challenge and we start to feel that compulsion to want to give them a bunch of advice, give them a bunch of solutions. We must notice that what's happening is we are becoming uncomfortable. And so we want to relieve our own discomfort and start telling them what to do so we can just get away from the discomfort. So that was the other part that I had to get, that I got very familiar with. It drives a lot of the hero, well, any of those characters, but they can drive a lot of that advice giving. So I just don't want to even sit with the discomfort I feel as this person tells me about, some of life's most horrible challenges, but even just the regular day-to-day challenges, or a team member coming to you, talking to you about whatever. They're struggling with, one of their coworkers and they want to complain about that to you. And that apprehension, that sort of feeling of discomfort of like, oh man, I really don't want this going on with the team. I want this just to get shut down. I'm going to get in the middle of this. You know what? Let's all get together and have a conversation. I'm going to solve your problem for you. And that is just, to all the scenario that we just played out, not a good idea. But I think if people can recognize that solution, that advice giving, if they can pay attention, and I had to learn to do that, to pay attention to my own discomfort first, it's really valuable.
Yeah.
Because the hero is really only ever trying to relieve their own discomfort.
Exactly. And what I also had noticed is that I oftentimes will sit in the seat of the hero in instances where I need a little bit of validation of my value.
Yeah, absolutely.
I need to really feel good about myself. And one of the ways I can get a win for Cliff is to actually show up and solve a problem for someone else and receive that appreciation from someone else that says, Cliff, yes, you are so valuable. I'm like, yay, I'm a hero.
And it is okay to offer advice if someone is actually asking for it.
Yes.
That's the other hero move, right? It's being offered without someone asking. We could just do a whole show on this, by the way, but
yeah. So real quickly, because I was recently not in the outline for today's show, which, by the way, I studied this morning before we started because I wanted to see where we're going with the Epictetus stuff. So
Epictetus, I never really know.
Exactly. I love Epictetus. Anyway.
Me too.
Just on TikTok about 3 weeks ago, I heard about for the very first time, the actual cycle of victim, abuser, and hero. And can we talk about real quickly what it means to be in the cycle?
Yes.
Can you explain what you mean by that?
I can. So first of all, let's give acknowledgement to Stephen Karpman, is the psychologist that identified these three characters that show up in conflict. So there's the victim, the villain, and the hero. And he came up with this from working with a lot of families, family dynamics, and specifically with addiction. But first and foremost, recognize that these three characters are showing up and a pattern will continue to recycle. It will continue to repeat itself. Each character has its own sort of leaning. So the victim is the character that says, there's nothing I can do about this. I am at the effect of the person, circumstance, situation. I am powerless to do anything. So you can kind of just, even the body language is like, oh, I can't do anything. I'm a victim. So there's that. Now, by the way, all of this dynamic lives in sort of if we go a little meta here, and sort of more of a victim consciousness. What's really important to recognize is this pattern shows up when a person or yourself are feeling as though there's nothing that can really be done about the situation. Okay. So that's victim. The villain character is a very different flavor. And the villain character points the finger and says, I'm the one that knows the right way. If only everyone would listen to me, they could get it together. And the villain, basically has all the answers. They know what's right. Both of those characters, the victim and the villain, take less than 100% responsibility for what's occurring. So they both have sort of this leaning towards responsibility. Like neither of them, the victim or the villain, will take any responsibility for what's occurring. The third character, by the way, I'm doing these in no particular order. The third character that shows up is the hero. Now, one of the things you want to know about the hero is that they can fix everything. They get value, what you just said, Cliff. They get value by being needed by others. And they can come in and fix all the solutions. And what the hero does that's particularly important is they take more than 100% responsibility for what's occurring. So if they can just fix this, if they can just tweak that, if they can just be a nicer person, if they can just listen a little bit more, so on and so forth, if they can just give more help to this person and be there for them in their misery, then everything will be better. So the hero takes more than 100%. So these characters show up, these dynamics really show up. And when there's a recycling issue, you can pretty much bet that these three characters are running the racket. And each person will be doing it. So let's say, for example, you and I had a conflict. You could watch and it keeps recycling. You could watch where we would be in, you might be in hero at one moment and I'm in victim, and then I'm in villain, and then you're in victim, and then and it just bounces around. It's fascinating.
There are a couple of things that come to my mind as I hear you explain that, and that's pretty much spot on to what I heard on TikTok the other day as well, explaining this cycle of these three. Yeah. And there are two things that stand out to me. Number one, it seems like, well, gosh, I want to play the role of the hero, right?
Yeah, it sounds good. Yes.
It's like, well, if there are three different roles or three different characters I could play, I'm going to choose the hero. And but the next thing that stood out to you, you said that this doctor that proposed all of this,
Stephen Cartman. Yeah.
These are three characters who show up in conflict.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a second. I don't want to be a character who shows up in conflict. So I don't want to play the hero. I don't want to be the victim.
Right.
I don't want to be the abuser, but I just don't want to be in conflict. Now, by the way, that doesn't mean that if there's a conflict happening out there, I just don't want to be a willing or unwilling participant in the conflict. I can be in the midst of conflict and not play any one of those three characters. And that's one of the things that stood out to me as I thought about that the other day when I was faced with this, and also here in our, in preparation for today. And prior to this, I would have said, I desire to be the hero. But now I'm recognizing it's like, wait a second, that's not what I desire. Number one, it gives me the savior complex. I'm the one with the solutions. And I don't allow other people to solve their own issues in some ways, and strengthening their weakness, their victimhood. There's seeking my own validation. Also, I'm tell you what, as the hero, the weight of the world is just too much for my shoulders. My knees can't take it.
Or your back.
Yeah.
What about your back?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's too much. So, and I'm glad you brought that up, because there are three other characters, and I'm going to mangle the names. I'll just say the book. There's the book, The Power of Ted, the empowerment dynamic, written by David Emerald. And he talks about in that book through a story of a guy's life, which is really great. It's actually a relatively quick read. He talks about what these three characters look like when they transform. So when they go from being in this overall victim consciousness to moving into trust, because all of these three characters show up in the pattern of fear, by the way. When these three characters transform and move into a pattern of trust, what they actually look like. And the victim, for example, becomes the creator. And I forget what the other two are called, but they do transform. So you can be navigating a conflict or a situation, and to your point, Cliff, not have to be in either of these, because things happen, right? And not have to be in any one of these roles or in that consciousness. So The Power of Ted is the book where he goes deeper into that.
Nice.
Yes. There are solutions. Woohoo!
All right, so we're going to go and deep dive with some sayings from Epictetus.
Yeah, so this is some of where this, and thank you, this lead-in has been so great, where this really came from. So I'm going to read this, and it's from a writing of Epictetus. I also love this because I think, Cliff, you probably could have written this. It's just the language is a little different, but we're going to do it. All right, so here's what he says. Other people's views and troubles can be contagious. Don't sabotage yourself by unwittingly adopting negative, unproductive attitudes through your associations with others. If you encounter a downhearted friend, a grieving parent, or a colleague who has suffered a sudden reversal of fortune, be careful not to be overcome yourself by the apparent misfortune. Remember to discriminate between events themselves and your interpretations of them. Remind yourself, what hurts this person is not the occurrence itself, for another person might not feel oppressed by this situation at all. What is hurting this person is the response he or she has uncritically adopted. It is not a demonstration of kindness or friendship to the people we care about to join them in indulging in wrong-headed, negative feelings. We do a better service to ourselves and others by remaining detached and avoiding melodramatic reactions. Still, if you find yourself in conversation with someone who is depressed, hurt, or frustrated, show them kindness and give them a sympathetic ear. Just don't allow yourself to be pulled down. I thought it was great.
That is amazing. And I think,
isn't it beautiful?
If I recall in your outline, I think you want to go through and highlight a couple of key elements of each of these statements.
Yeah. And we hit on some of this, but okay, so one word that I felt really stood out to me, or the idea is the part about sabotaging ourselves. And I thought, when I read that, I was like, sabotage. How am I sabotaging myself when I adopt or when I listen to, he says, other people's views and troubles can be contagious. Don't sabotage yourself by unwittingly adopting negative, unproductive attitudes. I don't know that I've ever thought through it as like I'm sabotaging myself. I just thought it was very interesting wording.
I can, in the context of that statement, it reminds me of the early days of leaving the lifestyle of the employee and becoming a business owner. So my peer network were all people who lived and understood I work for a paycheck. I get a couple of days off each year called a vacation, and this is my way that I live life and find my sustenance in the world, and everything that goes along with having the mindset of an employee. And then when I went out, all of a sudden here I am in the middle of the afternoon. I'm going to school to see my kids get awards at awards ceremonies and all these other things during the workday. Right. Yeah. And reports get back, hey, so basically the moms who are there at these award ceremonies are going back and telling my friends who have the day job still, Cliff was at the school today, blah, blah, blah. I saw Cliff today. And so all of a sudden I found myself surrounding myself with people who were really incredibly negative about life. And everything, and they say, Cliff, it must be nice to be able to do this. It must be nice to be able to do this, and I wish I could do this. And so all of a sudden, I found myself sabotaging myself, intentionally feeling guilty and ashamed of the freedom that I have to do what I want when I want. So much so.
Great example.
So much so that if I took time off during the day, I would force myself to make it up in the evening. If I went out and did this, I would actually have to make up for it somewhere else. Not because somebody else made me do it, but because I'm sabotaging myself based upon the views of these people.
Yeah. Oh, this is so great. What just came to me is gossip.
Okay.
Like gossip about a person. So let me be real clear what I mean. Talking about a person in a way that you wouldn't if the person was present.
Okay.
Okay, which typically is negative. Saying negative things, talking about them in a way you wouldn't if they were. And I was just thinking about when people have said a negative thing about a person perhaps that I've never even met before, how I can start off in a meeting or relationship already with these ideas, and I don't even know this person.
Yeah.
So I come in already and sabotage the potentiality of a relationship or anything, anything. happening because I've already got this idea in my head.
Oh my
about this
gosh.
person.
So yes, I was
Just sabotage.
That's sabotaging the possibility that exists in the relationship with this individual, which by the way, the gossip could be very well informed based upon experience and all this other stuff. But we have to also remember that person's in their cycle of abuser or victim or hero. And so therefore, if there's a cycle of conflict there, and I will say I'm in a brand new community, Daphne, as you know, of people that I've not interacted with this community before, and I'm heavily invested in these new relationships. And of course, I enter in and I'm noticing some of the dynamics of the conflicts that have arisen before I entered in. But
they're everywhere.
To me, I'm meeting all these new people. And because I have not been informed about anyone, I'm coming to them every relationship with a clean slate, with my desire to see the best in everyone. And so I'm building a relationship here, and in private conversation, be careful of that guy. Don't associate with this. Let me tell you about how this played out in my scenario, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, ooh, what? And this is exactly what this could sabotage my ability to have a meaningful, empowering relationship with a human being based upon what other people's perceptions and reactions and responses have been to this. And don't get me wrong, we all have our faults and all this other stuff. And
100%.
Wow. Gossip definitely is one of those areas where we can sabotage ourselves by allowing ourselves that negative influence of other people's words about another.
Yeah. So I just thought sabotage was such a great word.
It is.
Now, please, keep in mind this is it's Greek.
Well, this is where we blend ancient wisdom.
That's right, and where the translation is the translation. So I thought sabotage is very good. Okay.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So then he says, right? I'm just going to pull out the words. I'll give a little more context. He says, a person who has suffered a sudden reversal of fortune. Be careful not to be overcome yourself by the apparent misfortune. So a reversal of fortune. So the word that catches my attention is the word fortune.
Really? Because for me, the reversal of is so fortune, luck, and the reversal of it. And I love that part. Yeah.
It's kind of cool, right? The reversal of fortune. So my point here, and I think this fits into the part that caught my attention about this, was remembering that people do just have just bad luck. Stuff arises that is not personal. And I think, where I find my judging mind when someone's complaining about something that has happened or an occurrence that has been brought up, I can go into, and this is where I think it gets dicey around applying the idea of responsibility too broadly. So let me say what I mean. When someone's complaining about something that's happened, I can notice my judging mind will go towards the person, like that this thing happened to them because there's something morally wrong with them. like it's a personal thing. Like, you lost all your money because you're just not good with money. Like you're just sort of, there's just something kind of wrong with you. And I think that's what the judging mind kind of does. It makes a negative or
I think we may have lost Daphne, or have you lost me? I'm not sure. So please stand by if you are out there. Daphne will be back momentarily, I am sure. Just and who knows? Maybe it's me.
I'll start to make it sort of a moral. Back. And yeah, there we go.
So Daphne, we lost you just a moment ago.
Oh, okay.
But you're back. So continue on.
Here I am. So yeah, so we can just look at people, the events that happen, as simply bad luck. Like it's not a moral judgment. It's an impersonal sort of thing. And I think that's why the word fortune caught my attention. And also, I think we just forget this. I think that when people have what we may call a failure, they failed in some way, that we make it about them as a person versus stuff just happens.
Yeah.
And I think when that is where we can apply this idea of responsibility too broadly and inappropriately.
So this reminds me of Don Miguel Ruiz in The Four Agreements. Where
what? It's just going to be a thing now. I'm just going to rely that one of us is going to bring up the Four Agreements on the show.
So
we're just going to do it.
One of the Four Agreements is don't take anything personally, but also don't make anything personally.
Yeah,
recognize
about another person,
and it goes with another agreement. Understand that person is always doing the best they can with what they have to work with.
Yes.
I brought in 2 of the 4 agreements in that one.
You really did 2 of the 4. I think that's pretty good. And Socrates was the one who really had this explanation of the goddess of fortune. Like, will she shine on us today or not?
Yeah.
It's a way to explain.
It reminds me of the Tao. It's like what there's a flow of life. There's a flow of existence, and we sometimes can navigate waters and stuff like that. A lot of this is our perception. You know what stood out to me is the word apparent misfortune.
Now we're getting at it.
It's a perception.
Say more.
It's a perception of misfortune. Yes. Where you've told the story about the guy's son that broke his leg, and what's that story?
I don't remember the title of it, but it's a very old Buddhist story. Yes, is it so?
Yeah, is it so? So the whole idea is that there's this more misfortune. His son has broken his leg, and then all of a sudden, oh man, what terrible luck! And he's like, maybe so. And then all of a sudden they come and they're trying to take people for the war and stuff like that. And his son couldn't go. Yeah. Oh, you are so lucky. Maybe so. And it goes back and forth, all these different things. And the reality is that things are just what they are. And it's a perception of fortune or a perception of misfortune.
Yes.
And it's really putting a lot of meaning, and what meaning, and actually that ties back into the whole scenario. Is like, listen, a person who's in a victim level of consciousness and who has a habit of thinking negatively and applying negative meaning, what happens is our brain is consistently filled with all of this data, all of this information, and it distorts, deletes, and generalizes anything that doesn't go with our current perceptions.
Distorts, deletes, and generalizes.
Yes.
That's so good.
So what happens is we filter all of the incoming data to support what we already have come to conclusion about.
Yeah. Yes.
And so it's not that fortune isn't there. It's just not perceivable. It's been deleted, distorted, and generalized away.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah.
That's so good. Yeah, and that fits right into the next part of the phrase, which you got right to it. So then he writes, what hurts this person is not the occurrence itself. For another person, and I love this, another person might not feel oppressed by this situation at all. What is hurting this person is the response or belief he or she has uncritically adopted.
Oh, uncritically.
Uncritically adopted. Yeah, hasn't thought through. You're nailing it. Yeah, with what you just said. Yeah, I'm not looking at the situation critically enough, with enough rationale to realize that what's here now may not, I don't know what the future holds.
One of the most empowering statements I have adopted is, I don't know what I don't know.
Oh, geez.
That is, I don't know what I don't know. I'm going into scenarios. I'm talking about.
I feel like sometimes I barely know what I think I know.
Exactly. I'm going in and people are saying, hey, Cliff, you're interested in this amateur radio hobby. And what do you think about this? And I'm like, well, first of all, I want to tell you that I'm new to this. I've jumped in. I've had some experiences. And I have some perceptions about certain things. These are my current perceptions, and I will share with you some of them, and some of them aren't they're not flattering perceptions of certain aspects of this hobby.
Yeah.
But here's what I want you to know is my perception will evolve over time. I'm only seeing it from my conditioned way of thinking and filtering and seeing things. I'll give you a perfect example of this.
Okay.
I was having a conversation with a very young person, brand new into amateur radio. He had also studied intensely to get his technician amateur radio license. And so we connected one day on our local radio, and I said, hey, I'm brand new too. He said, I'm brand new too. He goes, what do you think so far? And I said, I'm loving it. He said, really? What do you love about it? And I'm telling him what I love about it. He goes, man, I tell you what, I just can't stand it. The airwaves are dead. And occasionally I run across somebody who, there's these two guys on this one repeater. I won't name any names. And all they do is talk about food. And all of a sudden, Daphne, I'm like, I know who you're talking about. And by the way, I'm embarrassed about this, but I'm still going to tell the story because it's true. It was how this worked for me. So I'm like, oh, dude, don't give up. Yeah. So yes, there is a repeater, and I'm literally saying this on the airwaves without consciously thinking about the fact that everyone within an 80-mile radius could be monitoring this conversation.
That's right.
All right.
That's
Even though I'm on a different repeater, the reality is radios can monitor various different repeaters all at the same time. So anyway, what happened was I'm like, I know exactly which one. I tuned in that repeater. I tried to jump in the conversation, and it's like it's the same two people all day, every day. They wake up in the morning and they talk about what they're going to have for breakfast. Then they go in and have breakfast, and then they talk about the breakfast they have until it's time to talk about what they're going to have lunch. And then they go and have lunch, and they come and talk about what they had for lunch and how it was. And then they talk about preparing dinner. I'm like 24/7, 7 days a week. That's all. It's like, and then I'm like, what you and I need to do is we need to choose to ask questions and get in here. If we only complain about what's going on now and not creating what we want and blah, blah. And I'm thinking I'm having this uplifting, empowering conversation when in fact I was a negative Nancy.
Oh, really?
Yes. That was an incredibly limited perception. So,
okay.
I have since developed a relationship with one of the two people who do a lot of food talk on the radio, and found out, very, very wonderful human beings. And one of the two people is an elderly gentleman that has a lot of physical limitations, and so therefore doesn't get out much. And practically life seems to revolve around what's the next meal. And that's and think about this. If you are on the radio and your primary social life is talking on the radio and you don't leave the house much, do you understand that you might run out of things to talk about, but what you're having for your next meal is a safe conversation to have? And if you're a foodie even, you might even enjoy talking about the ingredients and the variety. Didn't think about that. Didn't think about the fact that not everybody has the freedom and flexibility to go out and all this other stuff. And it's like, wow, you know what? There's a whole different way to see the two people who sit on a repeater throughout the day and talk about their food experiences throughout the day. And wow, do I have a different appreciation for that conversation and that topic on these airwaves, serving these people in this way. Completely different shift in my perceptions.
Wow, that's so great. And I mean, I think that's such a great example also of where you probably were falling into the hero role just a little bit, right? And I don't disagree with you, like, make your world your world. At the same time, I hear you that you were like, oh, what was really happening was I was judging in some way what was going on over there and not understanding that in that world, that totally made sense.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. And they can do their life like that, like, I think that's really great.
There's a little bit of the cycle there. So there was I was actually, if you think about this, I played the role of the victim. Oh yeah, I've been at the victimhood of not having anything other than these people who only talk about this. So I play the victim.
Yep.
I played the abuser without even being aware of it.
You didn't say anything bad about them.
Well, but I judged them. Now, by the way, if I was one of those two people, I absolutely said something bad about them.
That's right. You had some judgment and some criticism. You might not have voiced it explicitly.
Yeah.
But implicitly it was in there.
So I played the role of the villain. And then also I was also playing the role of the hero of how we can save the day of the airwaves in the Northern Kentucky, greater Cincinnati area.
We can do it. That's a really good example. I think that's really good. And I love that you caught sort of the subversiveness of your villain in there, your judger.
Yeah. Well,
right? If only they do it.
It came to me when I developed a relationship with one of those two individuals, and he says, "Hey, do you mind if I talk to you about something that I heard you say the other day?" And he brought it up,
so good.
And I'm like, "Man, I so appreciate you bringing this up."
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was completely unconscious. I was not aware of a different perspective. And this is, I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. Oh, love it. Okay. So we're going to shift a little bit from, we kind of been a little bit in our heads, talking about this, like what's going on. Now I want to talk about this part. He writes this. He says, "It is not a demonstration of kindness or friendship to the people we care about to join them in indulging wrong-headed negative feelings." And what caught me is, I do too. It's not a demonstration of kindness or friendship to join them in indulging in wrong-headed negative feelings. And I think this is where it gets a little spicy and dicey, because it's like, look, I hear that you may not like this, or I hear this is a challenge for you. And what do I do then? If I don't agree with the person and go along with their narrative that they're telling themselves, what do I do instead? Do I tell them, and start giving solutions? Do I start telling them, like, there's a way you can deal with this, and have you thought about this, and have you thought about that? I think that's also some of where our, all the other things we talk about, but some of where our solution giving starts to come in. It's like, okay, well, I don't want to indulge them in their narrative, but what do I do then? Do I just sit there? Do I not say anything? Do I nod politely? What do I do? And we'll get to that. But I thought it was just such a great thing. It's not a demonstration of kindness or friendship.
It's not. It's like, oh, I know what you mean. That, because what we're doing is,
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, we're reinforcing that. And in fact, they may be in a situation where there's a term aptly called misery loves company.
Yes.
And of course, let me go and find other people. And as soon as I find somebody who validates my misery, we can amplify misery together.
Yeah, and we can just do it.
Now we have connection, and which is one of the 6 psychological human needs. Now, as our misery increases, our significance increases.
Yep.
Right? And if we can actually have this, not just this misery, but multiple new, unexpected, unprepared for miseries. Now we have variety of miseries. And also the fact that we always seem to have misery leads us to have a level of certainty that we will always be able to experience misery. I will always have connection, variety, significance. This is amazing.
On my foundation of misery. All built on it. Yes. And so when we're with the other humans, how do what do we?
I love that.
The other humans, what do we do? And I think this is the part that I had to learn too. I'm like, how do I navigate this? Like, how do I listen to someone who's clearly challenged? They have like all these things that you brought up at the top of the show, like clearly challenged. Life has shown up in a less than, seemingly friendly way to them in the moment. What do I do? Well, what I first accept is I know that reinforcing that narrative probably is not going to be helpful to them. For a couple of reasons. One, I know that when people are stuck, they are in that victim consciousness. I know they are seeing themselves as less than empowered than they actually are. So, I've kind of learned over time, like seeing people in that light is not friendly in and of itself. Like can solve their problems and seeing those disempowered. And I do feel like people catch that vibe. Like you would catch pretty quickly if I saw you as a person who like, you can't really solve your own life. I think you would catch that, and it doesn't feel very good. It's not like, if you're my friend, I'm going to see you as empowered, right? I'm going to see you as a person who can handle your life. Even if horrible things have happened, I'm going to see you as a person who can handle your life. So I think in that way, it's not friendly or kind.
Yeah.
But what do we do? What do we do?
What do you do, Daphne?
Well, here's what Epictetus, I will talk about what I do. Here's what Epictetus writes. A better service to ourselves and others occurs by remaining detached and avoiding melodramatic reactions. So we do a better service. I agree with that, for ourselves and to the people we care about. And this is what he says. He says, show them kindness and give them a sympathetic ear. Now, I would say a compassionate ear, like have some compassion. Compassion could be even a strange word, but give them, or maybe even more so, an empathetic ear. Just don't allow yourself to be pulled down. So show them kindness and give them an empathetic ear.
Interesting.
And I think that in that space really does involve listening in a way. I think empathy is acknowledging with other people, acknowledging what has happened for them in their own words. You know, you and I have talked about motivational interviewing, but there's a whole piece in there about how we listen, not just parroting back what a person says, which I think is important, but also that is where asking questions becomes really powerful. To say, wow, tell me more about how that felt. Tell me more about maybe what you were thinking in that moment, and allowing them to process what has occurred, but not allowing them to get stuck in the narrative. And I think that's empathy. By the way, Brene Brown's work on empathy is probably some of the best I've ever read. But I think that's really what Epictetus was writing about this thousands of years ago. Also.
One of the things that I love about that is tell me more about what that experience was like for you. And in helping someone process through. What's amazing for me is when I ask a question like that, people will start stating the narrative that's been inside ruminating through their head.
Yes.
They begin to say it out loud, and they'll say, that sounds ridiculous when I say that out loud.
A lot of people do have that response. Yes.
And I've
experienced that too.
Isn't that interesting?
With myself also.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing about going back to a statement earlier about critically thinking about. It's like, how much are you criticizing your conclusions, your perceptions? How much time are we doing this? The other thing that got me, can you say the end of the statement about the melodramatic?
Yeah. A better service to ourselves and others occurs by remaining detached and avoiding melodramatic reactions.
Okay. So the word melodramatic, doesn't mean as much as to me as the word dramatic, which pulls out the word drama, which is a play, a narrative, a written script by which we should go by. Here's the story. This is the way this is being told. And what I love about this is that when a person is laying down their story, they're telling a story. They're telling a drama. And it's like, don't attach yourself to that. Don't engage with it. Just recognize what it is. It is a story.
Yes, it is a story. And it's a story, by the way, about, I think that the depth of stories, there's the thing that the video camera would record. Where the story comes in is with those interpretations about what the video camera recorded. And also, we can even get into story like about the future when someone's telling us something and it means, not only do I have a belief about what it meant in the moment, I have a belief about and a story about what it means in the future.
Yeah.
And that is really I think that's probably where the negative side of this can really hook us, because it is sort of part of our wiring to want to protect ourselves from XYZ that could happen in the future. And I think that is really what I watch out for, is when I get hooked into a narrative that someone's talking about and they start implying what it could mean in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Now, I was just going to say, and that's where I think, coming back to what you ascribe to, I don't know what I don't know. Be really helpful.
When you talk about the fact that a video camera will just record what the video camera observes, the actual playback of the video without anything added to it is just what it caught from that perspective. Where the story comes in, the narrative and stuff like that, those are the words, but that's the meaning that we associate. What came up for me is I've seen popular movies. Like, for example, there is The Shining with, who was that? Jack Nicholson?
Jack Nicholson.
It's The Shining. And so obviously not a rom-com, right? But
no.
But have you ever seen the movie trailer for The Shining as a rom-com?
No, I have not. Have you?
Yes, it is amazing. It's hilarious. And so
I need to put that in the show notes.
Okay. Yeah, we'll see if we can find it. But somebody went and retook scenes from the thing and put different music behind it. And the music behind it is a way, in my mind, it's a metaphor of the emotion that we have. So my emotions, so if I have, let's just say, sad, scary, fearful, anxiety-ridden emotions, imagine that kind of music. And that goes with a horror narrative.
That's right.
Whereas you take the same shots, same movie, same words, same everything. It's the same movie. They didn't change anything from the movie. Yeah. They just put different music behind it. A different vibration of music changes the whole feel.
Yes. I love it. You just made me think. There's a version of this out there too, Happy Birthday, written in E minor. So E minor is a very down, it feels like it's a sort of a downtrodden key, and they put the different the chords that go with it are sort of, sad. And it's very funny to listen to Happy Birthday written in that key.
Wow.
I think it's E minor. Yeah. Same idea. Yeah. And they carry it. And I love that you bring up music because it does have a vibration. Yeah. Right? Like it vibrates. There's resonance in these chords, and we can, and we also, that's the emotional contagion. Our hearts have vibration. They've demonstrated this too. So all of these things come into play. And I think that's the hook of the quote, negative emotion and how it can feel. I definitely want to see that clip of The Shining.
Awesome. I'm excited for you to, maybe you and I will watch it offline together.
I think we should.
But anyway, I want to say that one of the things that I love about this is amateur radio, bringing it up again, is learning about radio waves and learning about putting a electromagnetic signal out into the world, and the fact that it propagates at the speed of light, and they're everywhere. The radio waves are everywhere, including our emotions. All right. So including our emotions are being radiated out, and it depends on what your resonant frequency is as to what you receive. Just saying. Just saying.
That was the best explanation. Yeah, what you receive, and also I'm going to say broadcast. I know that's different because I've learned that from you.
Transmit.
But what you transmit. Yeah, also what you transmit.
And some of us do broadcast our emotions.
Do some days. Aww.
The FCC can't do anything about it.
They can't. But also taking responsibility for what we transmit, right? Both what we receive, what we transmit, and And I think that's probably the biggest thing in his writing. It's one thing for us not to. I can be very of course, I don't want to catch the negative emotion. Also, I want to be there for my friend. I want to be there for the people that I care about, and how much of a friend am I being? How kind am I being when I'm transmitting that or getting caught in that negative emotion too? It's not friendly or kind to them either. So it's both.
Daphne,
yes.
What is the final takeaway for you on our topic today? How can we support others without making it worse?
Yeah, without making it worse, I think two things. One, I think when you're I'm going to give a real practical sort of thing. One, when you're in that space with another human, please, please, please practice your breathing and pay attention to your breath. You will notice your breath changing. Take a couple just nice deep breaths. It can keep you present. I guarantee all these things will come back to you from the show that we just talked about. And then source some curiosity. Stay curious with people. Yeah. Right. That also is a way to kind of let go of our judgments and our fear and things that can come up. So those are just two very practical pieces. Be a friend.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
And what stands out for me after this conversation is this kind of image in my mind. When I'm confronted by somebody who is gossiping about others, who's either playing the role of a victim or whatever the case may be, in some, they're involved in conflict and they're being very negative. One of the things that I want to do is I want to imagine this person is a novelist, or they're a screenwriter for a play, or they're one of the writers for a television show. And this person is telling me a story that's being creative, the narrative of the drama that they are creating. And if I could just remind myself, and it's like, oh, wait a second, don't let me get caught into the drama. I don't want to influence them in their writing, in their story. I want to be a curious observer of the story they're telling.
Yeah, I love that. They're a novelist.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
Fun
Remember
stuff.
those. So those 3 tips. Yeah.
Daphne, what's your call to action this week?
My call to action is to remind, if people have listened to the show before, but to remind them that they can email me for the link to my course on values and purpose. It will walk them through. It's a very transformational process that can actually be done relatively quickly. Most people think, oh, I identify my values and write this purpose statement. It's going to take me weeks and months and years. And this course really walks them through 4 steps to curate that and cultivate that for themselves, which by the way, becomes a guiding light. If you feel like you haven't known, where am I headed here? What's important to me? What am I doing? I feel like I'm being pulled around 50 different directions. I can't, get a handle on what I'm trying to accomplish in my life here, or what I quote should be doing. This process in this course really can help people sort that out. So it's a process I have used with myself for years. It dispels a myth, by the way, that our purpose in our life, it dispels several myths about purpose, but one in particular, that our purpose and writing a purpose statement is static. And it is not. You get to iterate on that over and over. So if you're interested in that, please email me. Just drop me an email. Just put in there values, or just put in, I want the course. I don't care. Just email me. Put something in there.
I want the
and
course.
I will enroll you in it. Yeah.
Awesome. My call to action this week is for anyone who is either thinking about starting a business, if you're in the early stages of starting a business, or if you've been in business for a while and find that things are not going as well as they once were financially in your business. I want to share with you an online course that I created. It was a workshop done live here in the Next Level studio a couple years ago. The video recordings are available as an online course called Building an Online Business, and it's all about creating a profitable, responsible online business that can support you and your family and what you want to contribute to the world beyond. And if you are interested, one of the best sessions in there is the 11-step formula for how to have a profitable online business. And most people skip the first 7 steps and they just go out and start creating an audience. And that's the worst thing you could do, because there's one critical step. I'll just give you one little sample. There are 5 ingredients for a target audience that people sometimes miss, one of the biggest ones. Number 1, if you want to have a profitable business, people with money.
Oh,
that would be a good target audience, people with money, because you would like to have people have the resources to pay for whatever your solution is, right? So
that's right.
The number of people who have a target audience that does not have money doesn't typically lead to a good, profitable, sustainable business. Number 2, people with a problem. There's lots of those, and most people have the problem kind of figured out. However, that person with money who has a problem has to be willing to pay to have the problem solved. That's a missing ingredient a lot of times.
Yep.
The other one is you have to have the ability to solve that problem. That's usually not a problem. But the 5th missing ingredient that leads to one of the most unfulfilling lives you can possibly imagine is you have to want to solve that problem.
Yeah. That's a good one.
So that's just one little element of this 11-step formula is finding the right ideal client. is that 5 little ingredients. That's like, I think, right around step number 3 or 4 or something like that. And most people don't even think about that. They just, here's a problem I had, and boy, I wish this was available. And the question is do other people perceive that as a problem? And if so, is it the one they want to pay to have solved? And if they did, do they have money? And do you enjoy doing it?
Yeah. And that's a whole nother part of it, right? Yeah.
If you
I would definitely get the course.
Get the course, and all you have to do, I will give it to you for free if you email me, cliff@cliffravenscraft.com, and put building an online business course.
Yeah. That's 2 courses.
There you go. See?
There you go.
We're loading them up. All the free stuff.
All the free stuff. That's what we're all about. Well, I don't have anything more to say on this topic.
Wow. You know what? Let's go out and support some folks in this world, and let's let you and I choose our own adventure. How's that sound?
I love it. Let's do it.